Hello everybody, my name is Cole, also known as DaFees. You may have seen me around Instagram and other places. If you're seeing this here for the first time, welcome. For today's video, I wanted to talk about a recent experience I had with Darwin's Journey, but I wanted to talk about some expansions in general. I've played a fair bit of Darwin's Journey up to this point. I think I've got about maybe 19, 20-ish plays under my belt so far. But it was only this past week that I got to try the Fireland expansion multiplayer. For me, Darwin's Journey is a game that is dripping with theme. I mean, it's basically a worker placement game all about chronicling Darwin's journey through the Galapagos Islands, and you can kind of see a lot of that coming through in the gameplay, that you're exploring different islands and you've got a ship that's moving along the water, allowing you to get to those different islands, and as you're exploring each island, you're discovering new specimens that you can deliver to the museum, ultimately trying to get as many points for the various things that you were doing. And I thought that the base game itself had a lot of great theme and artwork to go with it. And then I got to try the Fireland expansion. Like last weekend, I had played it solo for the first time, and I personally thought there's something here. But I wasn't too quick to want to say anything just yet. I wanted to try it multiplayer and see how that felt. And so that's precisely what I did. This past Thursday, I got to sit down with a friend, and having played it several times with him already, we thought we were both ready for the Fireland expansion, so that's what we did. And wow. First of all, it was a very close game. It came down to 1 point. But my gosh, this is one of those instances where the expansion, takes the theme and steps it up a notch, and I just absolutely appreciated all of that. I mean, yes, you still have the same basic things that you used to. You're still the worker placement, you're still upgrading your workers, you're still choosing to send them out to maybe explore or navigate or whatever the case may be. And yes, you've got explorers and islands and you've got a ship moving along, but now you've got more islands, more explorers, and you've got multiple ship tracks now, so you're unlocking more ships to move about, and it's just so good. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. What really steps this up for me is the adventures that you go on. So normally on the regular map, and I'll show you here, this is the regular map, and you can kind of see what's going on there, the various islands and the ship track at the bottom there and all of that. But then we go ahead and flip this over to the Fireland side. Oh my. Yeah, so look at all that gloriousness there. There's all kinds of things going on there. So yeah, as you're exploring and navigating, you'll cross over banners that'll unlock new explorers and new ships and things like that. But then there are these gold banners. On the base game side, you cross one of those banners, you just get some points, and that's fine. But here, when you cross over one of those banners, you get to go on an adventure. Whether it's a land or an ocean adventure, yeah. But what I really appreciate about it is you pass over one of these banners, and then you get to draw a card for the respective adventure. Not only is there great artwork on there, but then they have an index in the back of the rulebook that is like, okay, you drew card whatever, and you can look up that card, and it'll give you some thematic tellings of what's going on there. Like maybe you caught a cold, so do you seek out medicine from the locals, or do you go back to the ship and try and use some of your own medicine? And I love how every card comes with a choice, and it's not just a mundane A or B choice. I mean, it is, but it's also they give you some thematicness to it. It makes it more interesting, if you will. Almost similar to the encounters that you would see in Scythe, for example. And yeah, I just really appreciate that about this, but they find a way to take it even up a further level, because in the expansion, there's a new element that you have to contend with, and that's time. There is a time track, and as you spend more time doing things, you're going to ultimately lose points at the end of the game, and if you spend too much time during the game, you're going to lose points during the game. And so I love how there's this interesting idea of having to balance your time, essentially. That with every adventure that you go on, you have these thematic choices that you can make. And so a lot of them give you a choice that it's like, okay, so you can spend a lot of time exploring the land or exploring the ocean, if you will. And that'll eat up more of your time, costing you precious points at the end of the game. But then you've gone on that adventure. You get the token, and those tokens will add up. You get enough of them, you're going to get points at the end of the game. That being said, you could choose to be like, okay, well, I'm going to ignore all that. I'm not going to make copious notes of everything that I'm doing. I'm just going to do this quick thing and get out of here. And essentially, you don't get the token. You're not spending a lot of time. So, did you really go on the adventure in the first place? And that's actually kind of the point. If you don't go on enough adventures, at the end of the game, you're simply going to lose points. But that's the tough choice you have to make. You go on adventures, you're spending time. You have to find ways to balance that time. And I just love what the expansion is doing. It's so good. That isn't to say that this is one of those cases where it's like, oh, I'll never go back to the base game. Absolutely. I've since played another round of the base game, teaching a friend how to play, and we had a good time with it. There is certainly room for both, but I just, given the choice, I probably would choose the Fireland side. I mean, everything that it has going for it is just so great, and I really do appreciate what they're doing with the time mechanic. And one of the other things that I appreciate, it doesn't do much for the thematics of it all, but I do love the special wax seals that they add for this, the time seals, if you will. That it's like, hey, here's a wild seal that is now available in the display that you can get through the Academy action. But if you get them, it's going to cost you time. And so it's like, yeah, it's nice to have these wild seals for their versatility, but that's also costing you time. So that's one more thing you're having to eat up your time and you have to worry about. And I mean, that being said, I love the adventures and how much thematicness they add to this game. It's so good. But I love games that do that in general, if you will, because some games, like, they'll put out expansions and it's like, oh, and here's more of the same, but it's not doing much to necessarily step up the theme, to add even more to it, if you will. But there are some games that do that and do it well, and I love it. Another good example is Tang Garden here, sitting over my other shoulder. And what I love about Tang Garden is, you've got the base game, you're building a garden, all set in the Tang Dynasty, it's a whole thing, it's great. And I love the look of it, but the expansions add more to it. They add scenarios. They're giving you, like, thematic touches to the game. Like, hey, here's a scenario. Like, imagine there's this festival going on, and here's these special rules to go with it, and here's these extra decorations and trees and what have you. And then, like, there's the Ghost Stories expansion, and that adds more of, like, a spooky element to it, which, not like I don't know how to put it, but, like, it just adds even more theme to the game. And then, of course, they get the Seasons expansion coming out, fulfilling hopefully later this year, and so there's everything going along with that, and that's just really good. Other games that I appreciate that do this kind of a thing, Meadow is another great example. I mean, that just has a lot of theme right from the jump, but then you get the downstream expansion. Well, here's this whole separate board, and you're going downstream, and here's all these other new cards and wildlife and things you have to discover and explore, and it's just more and more theme, and what's not to love it? It's just fantastic. I think Parks is another good example of that one. I love the base game. I love the idea of, like, oh, you're hiking along the trail and you're seeing the mountains and the trees and the splendor of it all, and it's great, and I appreciate that too. But then I like the Nightfall expansion. It's like, well, you don't always just explore the parks during the daytime. What about during the nighttime? And I like the idea that it adds more gameplay elements that give a nice thematic touch to the game. So it's like, oh, when you land on this location, well, you can kind of explore it for its daytime effects. Like, you get the token that's there, and you get to do whatever action is at that trail site. Or you can take this tent, and you can set up camp for the night, and then you can do some campsite action and get, like, maybe a potentially really good benefit that's going to help you later that round. So I like that that's going for it. Another one that I would personally count for me is Unfair. I like that. I mean, that is a game all about theme. I mean, you literally have theme packs in there. And I appreciate what the base game has to offer and its themes, but then I like how each subsequent expansion is adding more themes, and what's not to love. You can mix and match your absolute favorite themes, if you will. So maybe you've got a park full of aliens and dinosaurs, or you've got westerns and pirates, or westerns and robots. Maybe you're trying to make a cowboys versus aliens thing. Who knows? Or a Westworld. There you go. There's your reference. Yeah. So I like it. I like that, and Unfair is one of my favorite games, of course. So I like what each expansion adds with that, giving you just more theme, more options. I mean, who knows what kind of wild and crazy parts you might come up with. And with each subsequent expansion, you have even more options, so it's really good. And I would say to some extent, I would say for me, those would be some of my favorites, that the expansions enhance the theme for the better. Some games that I might give an honorable mention to, I would say a game like Wingspan. I mean, the theme is birds, and each expansion is giving you more birds, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to downplay Wingspan or anything. It's a great game, highly recommend. It's fantastic. It's more of the same. That being said, I know I haven't personally played the Asia expansion yet and everything that comes with it, so maybe that's doing some things that I'm not yet seeing. Like, I know there's the dual board, and of course you've got all the birds from the Asian region, so I mean, who knows? Maybe that's just waiting to surprise me, if you will. So I guess that's something that I have to check out and see, if you will. But there's that, and like I said, and I'm sure there are other games. Like, I'm sure Everdell and its expansions do a good job of that. I suppose Root, to an extent, probably does that as well. I'm not as deeply in, like, I've never played Everdell, and I've only played Root a handful of times, and I struggle with it every time, quite honestly. So, but I think those would likely be good candidates. I mean, I could sit here all day and probably rattle off some other games as well, but yeah, mainly I wanted to talk about Darwin's Journey, and the game that we played, it felt so good, and like the additional theme that was added to it all was just so neat that, like, every time we were taking our turns, like, oh, we unlocked an adventure, cool, so I'm gonna draw my card, okay, that's number whatever, let me look in the back of the rulebook, and boom, there you go. Fantastic. Just and like some turns it was just like so great. It's like I'd go on one adventure, which would unlock an action that allowed me to move the ship, which allowed me to go on another adventure, and that allowed me to do more land movement, which unlocked another adventure. It's like I took like 3 adventures in one turn. It was crazy. It was great. It was like, whoa. And what made it even all the better is, like, every time I play the base game, I have this, like, strategy, if you will, that I will try and maximize my workers. Because if you get, like, 6 seals on each of your workers, that's a guaranteed 30 points at the end of the game. Plus, if you do it right, you've satisfied all 3 of your crew cards, and that's even more benefits unlocked. And that's what I usually tend to focus on. A lot of the strategies and things that I've seen, I see a lot of people don't necessarily focus on doing all of that, and I usually tend to think, like, how are you able to do anything? How are you getting anywhere? It's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. The versatility that having maxed out workers provides to you, it's just, I feel like you can do so much with them. And then we played the Fireland expansion, and boy, I pleasantly surprised myself and my opponent. I only picked up like 3 seals or 4 seals the entire game, and it was so antithetical to the way that I play, but I somehow found a way to make it work. Despite everything that was going on, I found a way to make it work and go on so many adventures and rack up those tokens and all of that. And by the end of it, it was crazy. And even my opponent was surprised, because they normally are the one that is like ignoring the workers and not getting a ton of seals on them and not doing their crew cards. But yet they managed to do 2 of their crew cards, which is an actual first for them. I feel like this was the first game they ever did 2 crew, and this is the first game I did none. I even joked with them after the game was over, like I was going through some of the things we didn't see, and I was like, oh, here's this objective that would have never gone off for me. It's like, it wants you to have a completed crew member, and it's like, yep, that's not me. And it was so good, and I honestly love the Fireland expansion, and I can't wait to play it again and again and again, because yeah, it's just that good. And I mean, if you want to know my full thoughts on the base game, I'm going to leave a link in the description below, because I wrote a written review of the base game, and for me, Darwin's Journey is an absolute 10 out of 10, and I'm clearly not the only one that thinks this way, because it's already broken the top 500 overall on BGG, and I have no doubts, given enough time, it'll probably climb up to the top 100. It's just that good. I mean, Simon Luciani and Mr. Mangone did a phenomenal job designing this game, and I mean, That's not surprising. I mean, look at some of the other games they designed. I mean, Simon Luciani of note did Zolkin, and that is in the top 100, and that is a very well-regarded game. And it's just so good that Thundergriff was able to pick up this design because they do a phenomenal job with their production. I mean, you saw the playmat I was holding up earlier. That's just a sample of what their deluxe edition has to offer. I mean, other things like the plastic wax seals and the wooden realistic lenses, and like all the other wooden bits with the silkscreen printing on them and everything. It's just, oh, it's so good. I mean, it's hard not to love this game. It's just that good. And I know that it's supposedly hitting retail later this month, early next month, which is good because I think this is one that everyone should get to try. Even if you can't necessarily have the deluxe theme, I think the mechanics of it all and the themes still manage to shine regardless. And I think this is a great example of one of those games like going, if you think about the cones and cubes theory that I recently learned about, a friend noted that if a game is good, it'll be good even if you were to take its components and reduce it down to cones and cubes. And I feel like this is one of those games where even if you did that, it would still shine. Because, I mean, it's not only that good of a design, but I think the theme really does help elevate it. But I think it would be great even in spite of that. But yeah, I could go on, but I can't say enough about just how good this game is. And again, Thundergriff did a phenomenal job with it, but then again, they always do a great job with their productions. And yeah, that's just my rantings for today. I love the game. I love the Fireland expansion. I love the thematic additions that the expansion gives to the game. I think it's well worth it. And I'm not 100% sure if the Fireland expansion will make it to retail, but I hope it does because to me it's really good. I hesitate to say that it's a 10 out of 10 or that I highly recommend it. I need to play it more and play it more at other player counts before I would ever consider a proper review of it. But so far for me, it is really good and well worth checking out, if nothing else. And yeah, I guess that's just it. That I like it. I like what it does, and I like other games that enhance the theme all the more, like I've already mentioned. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching.